Hey everybody, these tape tips were originally recorded for YouTube, so occasionally an episode may have a few moments that are better suited for watching rather than just listening. The link to the YouTube video is in the show notes, and if you're on Spotify, you can choose to watch the video right there. Thanks. I have a question for you. Do you think our grade scale looks like this, more linear? Or do you think it looks like this, more exponential? And then, do we know where these divisions are, where one grade ends and the next begins? And to be clear, I'm talking bouldering or sport in any grade scale, French, Australian, German, whatever. Now, I've been climbing for over 30 years, and about year 4 or 5, when I was climbing 512 and V5, I knew exactly where these boundaries were drawn. For a fact. But then, as I climb more and more, up to 514 and V11, I've become much less sure that I can pinpoint the boundaries of any grade. And strangely enough, it's the grades where I have the most experience that seem the fuzziest, because more data points have just led me to believe that grades make no sense. And I'm pretty sure that actually indicates that I have a better understanding of grades than I ever have. In this video, I'm going to explain why I think the fuzziness of grades is not a bug, but a feature, and I'm going to try to give you a healthier way to look at grades and our grade scale that will almost certainly help your overall climbing progression. And look, because grades are a completely subjective measuring stick, we can't possibly know if the scale looks more like this or like this. But personally, I don't think it looks like either of these models. I think it looks something more like this. Let's get into it. If you've been climbing longer than a week, you've likely read or overheard or had some discussion about grades, maybe a heated discussion. You've heard people say that grades aren't important. You've probably been proud of a grade, frustrated by a grade, and confused by grades in general. I get it. Me too. Now, if you watched my most recent video, V7 is the key to V10, then you already know how I view individual grades as a multifaceted approximation of difficulty, with the number itself being only one facet, the others being the style and grips and rock type and conditions and more, the overall experience of the performance. But in this video, I want to focus on the scale and the number itself, that single facet where we place so much importance. Now, earlier this year, I posted a video that had people freaking out in the comments, partly because of an inadvertent grade comparison in the thumbnail, partly because I suggested that the grade scale might be linear. And I want to address both of those things because I think they highlight what are some common misconceptions about what grades really are, in my opinion anyway. When I made that thumbnail, I wasn't thinking that these route grades and boulder grades were equivalent, just that they were common sticking points or milestones to celebrate. But some people just couldn't believe that I would have the audacity to suggest that V6 and 513 are equivalent. Those people were positive they understood the boundaries of grades. Spoiler alert, they don't. Recently, I've been developing a big boulder field. If you've ever done a first ascent, then you know that the least enjoyable part of the entire process is assigning a grade. But it's the game we're playing, so we do it. And in order to do that, we have to consider whether we had the best sequence, how other body types might climb it, what conditions are, and whether or not it's a style that suits us or not, and if there are accepted technological aids we didn't use, things like knee pads, that might make it easier. And even then, accepted will change over time. And what if we just lack a particular skill that would change the way we climb it? And there are 100 other things to consider, but that's a whole other video. It's all very subjective, and it always will be. But to try to make it more objective, we attempt to come up with how physically difficult it will be given the easiest possible method and good conditions. And then we give it a single number, even though most of the time we're thinking of that number more like a range. And this range, in my opinion, is how grades actually work in the real world. They're an approximation. The assigned number just represents the middle of the range covered by this approximation. And in my opinion, that range overlaps other grades, a little more than a full number grade in either direction, or a couple of letters if we're talking root grades. So V6 might feel more like anything from hard V4 to easy V8, or 13A might feel more like hard 12C or easy 13C. And the cool thing is that if you can accept this, then grades start to make a lot more sense. And most of you, even if you're disagreeing with me right now, have at least partially accepted this, because we can't have a soft V6 and a hard V6 without a range being in place. And you've almost certainly thought, this thing that everyone else calls V6 felt like V5 to me, or V7 to me, because it's a range. That's not a bug, it's a feature. It's why grades can work for people of all shapes and sizes, which is also a whole different video. But whether or not you agree, what we ultimately do is we climb the thing and decide for ourselves where it fits into that grade, and then we argue about it on the internet. Which brings us back to that thumbnail. Even though it was never intended to say that V6 translates exactly to 513, I'm also not opposed to V6 translating to 513. I've climbed 100 513s and at least that many V6s, and I can confidently say that while some felt harder or easier than the number they were given, the vast majority, maybe all, fit into an overlapping range. Now, there are times when I can understand why it doesn't seem to fit. If you spend the majority of your time bouldering in the gym, then of course 513 feels much harder than V6. Or if you only boulder once a year, then V6 may very well feel much harder than 513. And if you are in that camp, where either the intensive effort required for hard boulders or the extensive effort required for hard sport climbs feels challenging for you, check out my free Try Harder toolkit. It's a 1-hour video series that goes deep into how to effectively create and manage your effort levels, both extensive and intensive. And like I said, it's free. The link is in the description. Anyway, we've all accepted that it's subjective, an approximation, so a range is the best fit. You might want it to be more precise, but it just isn't. And accepting that is step one. For step two, we need to look at the distance between grades. Now, I said in that video that I agree with Adamandra that grades are linear. And people were up in arms, arguing that because it's so much easier to go from V4 to V5 than from V9 to V10, then the distance between them must be massively different. But there's a glaringly obvious reason why that logic doesn't hold up. See, in most sports, we measure progress and performance more objectively, time and distance. And in all of those sports, progress inevitably slows, just like it does in climbing. I mean, for me, on a good day, I can run the 100 in about 15 seconds. Going from 17 to 16 wasn't really that challenging. 16 to 15, pretty difficult. 15 to 14, no chance. However, for somebody like Usain Bolt, that particular gap is easy. It feels just like the one before it. He's jogging. For him, it's the gap between 10 seconds and 9 seconds that seems to have increased exponentially. It might as well be an hour, but it isn't. All of the gaps are the same, 1 second. Now see, distance is similar. Off the couch, having not tried a standing long jump in I don't even know how many years, I first went a little over 6 feet, then the next jump was around 7 feet, and then the next jump, third jump, at 8 feet. 10 more jumps, no progress at all, maybe even regression. 9 feet just seems like it's a mile away, when in reality, it's only another foot. Making that leap, no pun intended, or getting down to something like 14 seconds is probably possible for me. But it would require consistent training and practice, better technique, more adaptable skill, higher levels of strength and power, focused strategies and tactics, a deeper understanding. Things I just didn't need to acquire to go from 7 feet to 8 feet, or from 16 to 15 seconds. And if, through years of preparation and some miracles, I were able to get to 9 feet, getting to 10 feet is probably truly impossible for me. However, Byron Jones, who holds the unofficial world record, jumped over 12 feet at the NFL Combine in 2015. Going from 9 to 10 feet is barely part of his warm-up, and I'd bet feels much shorter than the 12 to 13 feet, even though they're exactly the same distance. And that's because our human system, when it comes to action capacity and skill, does not improve in a linear way. It improves in a logarithmic way. Faster at first, then it slows to a crawl as we get closer to our upper limits. So even when progression is measured in perfectly even intervals, like in time and distance, our perception is that the next interval is bigger and the next bigger still. It feels exponential. That isn't necessarily the reality. If we combine that idea with the fact that we inevitably see other people just breeze through our own personal plateaus, it's not hard to see grades as closer to linear. But honestly, because grades are entirely subjective, you can view the distance between them however you want, linear, exponential, or whatever. And not to mention, if grades do function best as a range, if you buy that part of the argument, where do we even begin or end our measurement to decide if it's linear or not? If you're still at the very beginning of V6, then the hardest V7 can feel a long way off. But if you're at the hardest V6, the gap to the easiest V7 is, well, maybe even negative. See, I don't think there's a right answer, but I do think that how you view it, how you answer it for yourself, has the power to affect your progression as a climber. So if a goal seems unattainable so far in the distance that you can barely even see it, how likely are you to chase it? And if you think it's just a matter of continuing to do what you've done until you get there, that it's simply a function of time, then it's pretty likely you're going to show up there ill-prepared. But if you recognize that you have the power to adapt and learn new skills and get stronger, and that even in these potentially linear measurements, there's a range, then it becomes much more attainable. I mean, look at it this way. If I can improve my skill such that I can jump 8 feet 6 inches consistently, even when my technique is a little off or the wind is against me or I don't have a positive attitude, then I'm getting much closer to reaching 9 feet, even if I hadn't gotten any closer in terms of hard, objective measures. Because I've raised the probability that on one of these jumps, things could click into place and I jump a little farther. Personally, I find that empowering. Because as I get closer to mastering the grade I'm in, moving consistently higher in its range, then I'm effectively getting the exact experience I need for the next grade. That big goal doesn't look so far away, and I can easily see the path to even the next grade. And look, having those grades looming out in front of you is an important carrot to chase, a carrot that just represents that we've leveled up, that we've transformed ourselves in order to do something that much more difficult than what we've done before. To have something to reach for that seems a little more concrete. It's subjective concrete, sure, but when you look at it in this, what I think is a more realistic way, then grade chasing and mastery chasing are essentially the same thing. So yes, maybe grades are confusing, but they can also be motivating, important, necessary. I mean, knowing what grade or grade range someone else thought something felt like, or even better, what hundreds of people have generally agreed on, lets us reconsider our own readiness. Maybe I've leveled up a bit. Or, maybe this grade isn't actually sandbagged and I'm just missing something, which incidentally is likely the case most of the time, whether you like it or not. And grades are just part of the game we're playing, so you're going to have to deal with them. How you do that, ultimately, is up to you. If you already know that where you need to level up is in your movement skills, and you're at a point where you don't know exactly what direction to go, I've made an analysis tool, the Atomic Elements of Climbing Movement, that can help you decide. That link is also in the description. See you next time. Thanks for watching or listening. In the show notes, you'll find related links, videos, and episodes, as well as how you can subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Current, where we connect the dots to help climbers learn, grow, and excel.